for books, for t-shirts, for past events and videos. Check out his website, zenbitchslap.com. All righty. And if we go, now this is a familiar part of the book for all of us. If we go to page 24 of our big book and start with the squiggly writing, the fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of suffering and humiliation of even a week ago or a month, or a week or a month ago. We are without defense against that first drink. Isn't that the truth? Almost certain consequences that follow taking even a glass of beer do not crowd in the mind to deter us. If these thoughts occur, they are hazy and readily supplanted with the old threadbare idea that this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. There is a complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one from putting his hand on a hot stove. The alcoholic may say to himself in the most casual way, "This won't burn me this time, so here's how." Or perhaps he doesn't think at all. How often have some of us begun to drink in this nonchalant way, and after the third or fourth pounded on the bar and said to ourselves, "For God's sake, how did I ever get started again?" Only to have that thought supplanted by, "Well, I'll stop with the sixth drink," or "What's the use anyway?" When this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid, and unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. These stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legions of alcoholics throughout history. But for the grace of God, there would have been thousands more convincing demonstrations. So many want to stop, but cannot. There is a solution. Almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confessions of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful, excuse me, for its successful consummation. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we have been living it. When therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence, which we had not even dreamed. How's that for a beginning?
That's a mouthful, yes. Paul Alcoholic, good morning, everyone. Sorry I was late for a minute or two. Yeah, now the way I see this, or you could see it, is that the baffling part is we don't know that we've been taken over. So without knowing that, then all the aspects or the expressions of being taken over arise. It seems very confusing to us. Why can't I stop? Why can't I just say no? all of this confusion is based on not recognizing the root of the problem in a way. We've been taken over by a foreign pathogen, and the foreign pathogen is overriding our agenda, so to speak, and supplanting it with its agenda. So every time where we used to think we would turn left, we turn right, it produces a sense of bafflement because we're not clear about the exact nature of the wrong. So when you don't see your role in things, it's sort of on a basic level of being out to lunch. You know, I would go out with the hopes of having a good time, go to some bar, shoot some pool, cop some drugs, do the drugs, go to a dance, go to a club, try to meet a babe, and end up in jail like at 12:30 or 1 in the morning. And then the next morning they'd release me. And then maybe not that day, but the next day. Oh, hold on. I gotta turn on the battery. The next day I would do the same thing, expecting different results. Now, why isn't this concerning every topic? It's especially concerning this one, because something's taken us over, and how it fuels its little takeover is us doing shit, like drinking and doing drugs. Because it's sort of like there's a lot of yapping, but once the genie's out of the bottle, you're going to live by its 3 wishes, not yours. And usually those 3 wishes for many of us is institution, jails, and death. So basically, the genie gets out of the bottle. It's the genie's life, so to speak. And the bafflement is we still have this story of self-centeredness, thinking that I'm in control, that I can manage. And it's not true. And so we're blind to the obvious facts. Almost everyone else sees we're screwed before we do. What does this all imply? There's some message in it that something must be, like it says in recovery after you get in the program, you know, you'll realize something has done for you what you can't do for yourself. Well, one of the first realizations, hopefully, is you realize something is done through you that you would never have done by yourself. Yeah, I hope that's a revelation, because then you see then you're not baffled anymore. You're not like, I can't believe it anymore. You know, you see the nature of the wrong, and then you see its traits, yeah, and how it defeats us. It doesn't have an infinite variation of the defeat. If you see enough of us that have been defeated, you're going to see a pattern, yeah, and hopefully you'll do an inventory and see that pattern that you see in all of us alcoholics as your pattern, and then hopefully you'll go further and see it's not your pattern, it's the pattern of self that's dominated all of these different us's, yeah, all of these different Pauls and Jims and Marys and Valeries and stuff like that. We end up in similar consequences and situations because we got one driver. All the while, the programming keeps talking as if we're behind the wheel, and it's very fucking confusing. Because we're not behind the wheel. That's the good news. So in this case, when you realize you're not behind the wheel, you want to get a new driver, as we say in AA, a new employer. And an employee means to use. So something has used us in the past, the old employer, let's say alcoholism. I believe it's identification as self, an obsession thereafter. But let's say alcoholism. So that's the old employer. And we know what it's like to work for that. Yeah. So now we have a new employer. And maybe we don't know what it's like to work for that. But there's people that have been in this process and have lived under this new employer for quite a long time now. And they can share and reflect and express to us what it's like to live under the new employer. And maybe the motivation will be, I just don't want to work for the old employer anymore. I don't want to be worked by the old employer. I don't want to be used by the old employer. So yeah, sign me up for the new employer. But after, AA produces the goods. So after a while, working under the new employer, you recognize benefits are starting to happen. You're not going to jail, let's say. You have, like we used to joke around, what's one of the consequences of sobriety? You'll have the same phone number. Yeah. I've had the same phone number for 20, 30 years now. Things like that start happening. So, and this is all constructed and allowed to happen by the new employer. Yeah. So, I don't know. I read everything when I hear everything from the book, I hear it from this idea that there's something in me that's not of me. Let's put it that way. Sort of like a long-term virus, but in this case, I call the virus me. And when the virus manifests through me, I call them mine. I would say I'm in the act of being identified as the virus. And I would say that's what keeps the Petri dish so hospitable to alcoholism, to tell you the truth. And a lot of other, let's say, not very expansive qualities. So, yeah, I'm just so happy to be here, and I think the repetition in time is important, and just to be sitting in the certainty of the solution, and actually a certainty about the problem from the solution. You know, seeing it from a solution, the solution tells you about the problem. So, thanks everyone for having me, and there you go.
Thanks, Paul. I don't see any hands yet. If anybody has any questions on anything that you're dealing with in working the steps and living this thing we call sobriety, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, raise that little hand and sound off here.
Hey, can I share something, honey?
Sure.
On the top of page strip 23, I think he's talking about all these things they've just shared before we get to 24. He says, these observations about being an alcoholic would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. That's the glory of abstinence, yeah? That you realize the problem isn't about stopping drinking, it's about not starting, yeah? And you live in that state of not starting. And man, it's a big open space, yes? Once you start, it turns into harm reduction, really. So the whole point is, how can that urge to keep getting, escaping from whatever, how can that be changed? It's changed by the basis of our life changes, trusting something infinite rather than our finite self. Everything goes back to that, really. Yeah. And we can't do that. If we try to trust the infinite as the finite self, that's trusting the finite self. You can't get out of that little conundrum. So there's a surrender here. There's a recognition that I can't do it, but something else can. Yeah. And I'm going to allow it, let's say. And why it wasn't allowed is when we're taken over by alcoholism, because we don't have that choice in our life. We're occupied already. So we have to go through the first 3 steps to get to the working steps so that a change can occur. And that emphasis, as self gets diminished, you'll lose interest in it, as it says. You'll lose interest in self. That losing interest in self is what allows a lot of other possibilities to land, yeah? And there's a trick about losing interest in self. Self can't do that. Because anytime self tries to lose interest in self, that's interest in self, yeah? That's the dilemma, yeah? It's like the same dilemma of quit playing God. Unbeknownst to you, there's a playing God that reads that, and so that which is playing God tries to quit playing God, which is just more playing God. There's no out in that little mechanism. So it says here, in a way, These observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink. There you go. I haven't had a first drink in 33 years. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Because I was very clear, I didn't take the first drink. Something took the first drink, and that something then took me over. Yeah. I don't have alcoholism. Alcoholism had me. Yeah, that's how I see it. I don't see it as, oh, I just, who would choose to have alcoholism? Yeah, it's not one of the top 10 when you win door number 3. Yeah, I'll choose alcoholism. No, you don't have it. It has you. Yeah, it's just that simple. Why do we have this language that we rely on that that's bogus? Its emphasis is always misplaced. Yeah, we're getting totally dominated by something, and then we think, oh, I'm fucking myself over. No, you're not. Yeah, that's an old story. Something's fucking you over, but it's not you. You'd be happy as hell if it would stop. To tell you the truth. Yeah, you'd be grateful, and you'd maybe actually get out of your ass of self and help others. You may. Who knows? Yeah, you'd be fucking blissed out. Yeah, you're not fucking yourself over. Something's doing it. Yeah, let's see it. Let's call. Well, it's just a suggestion of a view, a different view, because the old view tends to end up in an alley, a dead-end alley. It doesn't go any farther because self can't get out of self. Yeah. So no matter how much there's an improvement of us and self claims it's a finite level of improvement. It ends, yeah? Because self can't get out of self. It may look like it can get out of self for a period of time, but it inevitably runs into that fact that self can't get out of self. Inevitably, it's going to run into that fact, yes? And then what happens then? Do you think self comes to its senses? No, it doesn't. It will keep trying to get out of self with different vehicles. You throw it in from drug addiction and crack houses into like meditation halls and shit. It's the same in a way. It's going to be self trying to get out of self with different methodologies. Yeah. Yeah. And usually the great revelation isn't that you succeed, is that it fails completely. And then maybe you recognize you're not that. Yeah, I don't know. What can a failed system show you? It's failed. That's its value. I think all of us have seen it already. Yeah? There's no more need, in a sense, to get defeated anymore. You've seen it. Yeah? Let's move on to the next stage of acquiring a new employer. And moving on, and then have that migration to the trusting the infinite. And then living life from there is completely different than living life from trusting the finite self. Yeah. Because it's not trustworthy. Not because it's personal, it's myopic. It's a failed system. It collapses on itself. And its agenda may be there to be of help to you, but ultimately is for its own survival. It wants to be self. Yeah? So when push comes to shove, you get pushed out and shoved out. Yeah. It's like that old story with the lady who saves the snake, and then the snake bites her a couple of days later, and she's shocked because she was so nice to it. And the snake she asks the snake, why did you bite me? I'm a snake. Yeah? This is like a parasitical movement. You can't blame any, it's like a friend of mine who's had a terrible relationship, and then they share another terrible thing that the person in the terrible relationship has done, as if they're surprised. Hey, the stripes were revealed years ago. I mean, how can you be surprised now? Yeah? what's surprising is that you're surprised, really. I mean, you know, when do you sort of get it and open up to moving on? Self can't get out of self was not it was not injected into the program of recovery. It came after people practiced the program of recovery, and there was an observation of something that wasn't noticed before, which is self can't get out of self. It doesn't say that the first page of the big book. Self can't get it. No, they learned it. How did they learn it? By trying to get out of self as self. Or there was a trying to, they weren't, but there was a trying of getting out of self as self. And there was a clear recognition, and suddenly this statement came up in our community, and it's become a central point in some of our community. Self can't get out of self. It's not in the book, I don't think. It comes from people watching that exact action going on and on. So there was an awakening to that, a recognition, and it got so much oomph that it was passed on as an incredible little cryptic statement, yeah? Self can't get out of self. Why would you say that to Paul and Jim and Debbie if they were Paul and Jim and Debbie? You're not saying it to Paul. You're talking to what we are about what we're not. You're saying, hey, Paul, a.k.a. self, you can't get out of yourself. Oh, far out. Thank you. Yes, it's an incredible thank you. This is the 5th attempt. First drugs, first reading science fiction, then fucking drinking, then more drugs, then spirituality. That failed, back to drugs. Then holistic living, macrobiotic, tons of things. So every one of them were different vehicles of the same theme, self trying to get out of self. Yeah? There's nothing wrong with macrobiotics or this or that. It's the intention that's given it by what's before it. So if I'm trying to get out of what I can't be in, they're going to be mechanisms of failure, yes? They're going to fail me with the hopes that I finally get it. I hope. I don't know. See, like here, you're up. Nothing's working. You sit on your ass for a long time meditating. Maybe some possibility becomes available. Now you're up again. But now it's different. If you just stayed with the first up, it may not, you would be traveling heavy. So you've done something, let's say meditation, you followed the 11th step, things got released, and now when you're up, there may be no need to sit down. You see? You're walking around being meditated. It's completely different. Now, if you want to jump right to that from being up, you probably can. Yeah? So we have to do certain shit to get to arrive at a point where we don't need to do certain shit. Yeah? But it's not a lifetime of doing certain shit. When the condition is produced, there'll be new stuff. There'll be new possibilities. Yeah? So let's say you start out, all right, I got to be in boot camp, man, because I don't trust myself as far as I can throw me. So I get some fucking sergeant type guy, hey, call me every day, and like that. It may work. Hopefully it doesn't work for 10 years, maybe a year or two. Then there's a little more space. I can maybe I do a daily practice. But then I realize if for some reason I miss the daily practice, I'm listening to a narrative that says my whole day sucks because I couldn't meditate. Now that looks like slavery to me. So no, okay, wait a minute. I can't be that. Now my solution is being used to enslave me. Nope, I'm not into that. So suddenly, hopefully, you arrive at being a free-range alcoholic, yes? Yeah? Now you start from an okayness that could be strengthened or weakened by what you do or don't do, but you start with an okayness. Yeah, you're not trying to build an okayness. You start there. It's totally different. Yeah, it's totally different. Yeah. So now you know you're in good hands, and those hands aren't yours. So what's there to sweat? Yeah. Stay close to it and can't be far from everywhere, and do its works well. Well, who's going to tell you when they're not being done well? Your fucking head. Yeah. You're now have your contract with the new employer, and it says, page 63, it's going to take care of you. Woo! That's freaking awesome. Because most of my life was a fear of not being taken care of, obviously. It's just said, as the new employer, I'm going to take care of you. Now, 30-something years later, I'm not in the fear and anxiety, is it or isn't it? I know, I have faith that it takes care of me. Why? Because it's taking care of me. It's not a giant leap of faith. The leap of faith is to the insanity. There's no leap of faith needed in recovery. It's because it produces the effects. I've been taken care of for 33 years. Should I still be sitting there worrying, like, am I going to be taken care of? I think that's abusive, really. I do. I remember I used to paint houses, and this family I painted had a grandmother from the old world. And she would stand there. She had the stocking socks and the long dress, and she would just look at us painting all day. And her hands would be going like this. And she'd look at me and go, are you going to move those cans? Of course we're going to move the cans, whatever, Mrs. something. So one night I decided to fuck with her. I left the top on the living room floor, and I put a can there, and I could see the speed of this started moving really fast. She's flipping out. And I said, yes, I'm going to leave that can there. I'm not moving the top. Of course I'm going to move the can. Come, give me a break. I've moved the can every day. I'm not, you know what I mean? It was insane. Have you or have you not been taken care of on some fucking level? Has hopefully the urge been removed to drink or use? What more evidence do you need? Or are you in the profession of being the doubting Thomas? That's fucking reliance on the finite self, to me, completely. If you're not convinced by now that you're taken care of, I don't think anything can do it. Really. So you maybe be honest about that. Yeah. Oh, I'm not sure. All right, well, follow the dictates of the finite self. That to me is the greatest teacher in his life, yeah? Go argue with it, really. Argue with life, see how you do. I would rather just say no mas and get on with it, yeah? Why do you want to go through the 28th round? You're going to get knocked out, yeah? Just surrender, yeah? Jesus. Yeah, so I feel it's important. You could do a retreat on self-care, get out of self, really. But it's much better delivered in a very quick whack, to me. Yeah. Because if it doesn't trick, because you've seen it, it's something that you don't want to know because there's a reliance on self. It does not want to know the evidence against its position. But here we have it. We know that self can't get out of self because we've been watching it for years. It doesn't come to a recognition of that. Self doesn't realize it can't get out of self because it doesn't see itself as self. It sees itself as Paul. It sees itself as Kurt. And it sees itself as Mike. And that stubborn delusion they talk about, if we can only manage better, doesn't even stand up close to this stubborn delusion. Yeah, of self getting out of self. That's way beyond if I could only manage better. That's just that's a little attribute of self can't get out of self is a huge the huge delusion of all. Yeah? How are you going to realize you're not in something constantly in the act of trying to get out of it? How? Yeah? When we're in the act of trying to get out of it, there's an investment in being in it, or was in it. I'm afraid I'm going to be back in it. There's a huge mental investment in the reality of the in, because your whole story would fall apart. And you don't want to be seen as the emperor with no clothes. The mental state is saving its fucking image instead of its ass. Yeah. It doesn't want to be seen as wrong, so it'll just perpetuate the wrongness. Yes, on and on and on. This is the pride of self. Yeah? It's failed, but it won't admit it. It won't. I didn't admit it. It was admitted to me. Something took the reins of the whole story and just went to the innermost and just revealed the truth that had been the truth for many, many years, that I'm fucked. Yeah? That did not come from the head. No way. No way, no way. Yeah, that message did not come from there. Nor was it received there. Yeah, so the problem resides in the mind. You don't want the mind to be entertaining the solution. This mind, the mental activities. No. Yeah. It'll stay all day thinking if it should go to the meeting. It needs to be in the habit of going to meetings. So you think which one, yes? Yeah, yeah. So I just really feel this little bit of understanding goes a long way in living life a day at a time sober. Just do, yeah. And it has such a momentum and it builds up such a power because you don't need to stoke that engine. It's like self-lights, yeah? It just lights itself up. All you need to do is honor it a little and be grateful for it, and it just keeps on cooking. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. You don't make things easier, it makes things easier. Yeah? Yeah. So, that's why we don't have, let's dissect the step. The steps are sound. They're perfect for what's needed. What I feel is a clarity about the exact nature of the wrong would be helpful. Yeah? Because if you think it's a thing, you've lost already. If you see it as an activity, there's a possibility of being free from it. Yeah? But if you keep calling it you're trying to be free as it, and then you're caught in the net of self can't get out of self. Don't you see it? I mean, it's obvious. If you take yourself to be that, then you're trying to be free as that. Yes? That's the bondage of self. It's using freedom to bond you to the idea of being the one who needs freedom. It's freedom from self, not freedom for self. Please get it clear, yes? And see, of course, none of us would say, oh, I'm not looking for freedom for self, but in the act of being identified, you are. Yeah, because you don't know, you're taking yourself to be the mental image. So exactly what you're denying is actually what's happening. You are attempting to be free as self. And that's why, and all the confusions about why and why not it's working or this and that is all based on that bit of confusion. It all comes from not knowing that. It does, seriously. Yeah. Self can't get out of self is one of the most obvious statements when you don't look at it from self. I swear. It's just like, yeah. Yeah, all you do is go like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now you see self, one self, but the other self being called Paul isn't seen. So Paul makes total sense to Paul to get out of self. Why isn't it working? Because it isn't Paul getting out of self, it's self getting out of self. There you go. There's the diagnosis. Yeah. Don't call me with 800,000 stories. That's the reason why. The reason why is you're mixed up with Debbie and self. You think Debbie has a self or is living with a self. You don't realize the idea of Debbie is the self incarnating. It's the living aspect of self. It's the selfing. The idea of self as the devil and the culprit is an objectified aspect of self that many of us can notice, but we very rarely are seeing the subjectiveness of selfing. Yeah? And hopefully we're pointing this out. So you can recognize the idea, and see, the idea of Paul is always, see, it's not so much the idea of Paul. That's going to be here. It's what's behind it, what's moving through that idea of Paul. Is it the mental activity or is it spirit, so to speak? That's really, see, there's no light in Paul and there's no darkness in Paul, but light and darkness can come through Paul. Yeah, that light, yeah. So we're very, very, very thin. We're not a long-lasting solid thing. We're like a very thin membrane, and what's moving us is what's going to express to us. So if you're moved by the finite self, there you go. We've had enough examples of what comes through. If you're moved by the light, hopefully you've got enough examples in your own life to notice that. Yeah? So Paul is just a little, Paul is like a pointing, Paul. Yeah. Now, if it's backed up with tons of mental storage and programming, then there you go, the bondage of self. If it's sort of empty and light's coming through, there you are. You're like the paintbrush for spirit to do an art project with. Yeah. That's it. Adjusting something finite or the infinite or the infinite. Could you imagine that which is trusting the finite isn't you? What a relief. Yeah? So you don't have to try to teach it not to trust the finite. No. You see you're just not that. And so then you can see in all of its naked glory the faith in a failed system. Yeah? Because you're not of the failed system. You're out of it. And then you can also see the idea of the infinite as being a living basis that you can live your life from. Yeah. It's not you seeing it, there's a seeing it. Yeah. So yeah, anyone?
Yeah, we have Leah, who's been patiently
Oh yeah, I just went going on a rant.
available here. Leah, are you ready?
No sound, Leah.
Can you unmute, honey?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hi, Nikki. Thank you for your service and good to see you.
Good to see you, honey.
Paul, so there's not a question, like I've been coming here now for close to a year, and there's not a question, an argument, disagreement. There's not a not handing my life over. There's not a willful, conscious exertion of my self-will. It's not willful. It's not willful. When I quit drinking 12 years ago, I was really lucky and blessed or divinely touched, where I said I was done and I never touched a drop of alcohol again. Never. 12 years, great. What I've come to find out is that I did not ever address the causes and conditions, and just being abstinent from alcohol did nothing to, address those underlying causes and conditions. And so that's the resentments and the control and the fear of abandonment and the self-will run riot. I have no emotional sobriety, and I have started one fire after the other with my mouth, with my temper, with this compulsion, seemingly, just to continually put my foot in my mouth and puppeteer and manipulate. And so I'm admitting all of it, right? It's all there, and I continually pray about it. It seems that despite no disagreement whatsoever that I'm powerless, that these negative traits of the action figure, and I agree, it's not me, I'm possessed by alcoholism, it's not me. I'm having a hard time, unlike my situation when I quit alcohol, I stopped, done. I'm having a hard time with the emotional piece of it.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Surrender.
But I have surrendered.
Well, surrender that you have surrendered. Yeah. Just keep the attitude fresh. It doesn't matter if you've surrendered like March 21st on May 11th. Yeah. The emotional sobriety usually doesn't show up in this process like the first week. Yeah. Yes. You've been with this for a year, let's say, in this direction. The uncomfortableness of those things are more raw because you're more open. Yeah, things are moving. So of course, you know how when you're out there, it looked like a lot of times people come in AA and they think they have no resentments. Yeah, because the mental denial has been so good, they think they don't have any anger or resentment, and they're the angriest person you ever met. Yeah, so now that the system defenses start lifting off, you get to see the rawness of stuff. Yeah, you got to let it have its 5 seconds on the stage, or ever how long, and just trust the process. Yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day, so to speak. Yeah, I've had certain deep mental grooves that took 11 years to sort of play out in sobriety. They would have dominated me from the dark the rest of my life. They would have. But because I was in this process and that something demands from me that my head doesn't want to offer, yeah, and I had given up hope, well, things changed. And then that thing that used to really, really flare up would show up, but it would be just like, instead of a forest fire, it'd be like, lighting a small, garbage can. Yes? And so I saw that as great, great progress. So yeah, honey, all that stuff that's not you is still the basis of experiencing and interpretation. It may take a little while to change, but at least you're established in what works. So just keep allowing it to work.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And what else can you do? I mean, like it says in 12 and 12, no one wants to admit complete defeat. No one wants to. That's why we relied on the head. We wanted the easier, softer way, so to speak. And of course, that isn't the easier, softer way. Sometimes you have to go through a process. Remember when I came in here? This reminded me of something. When I came in here, I had my whole life had nothing to do with process. The process of my life was acquiring drugs, putting it in the water and shooting it up, yeah? it was pretty much instant gratification as quickly as possible. Then I get into AA, and there's a beginning, a middle, and an end of a lot of processes. Yeah? And then what happened was, and at the beginning it was like, well, I don't want to go through these processes to get to that end. Yeah? But then I got lost in the middle. Processes were happening, and I wasn't looking for the end of them or anything like that. Yeah? My whole life got changed under this influence. So I've been because I'm not in the outcome business, first of all. You know what I mean? I'm on an operating table. Maybe I think it should have been over already, but it ain't the operation, and I just keep submitting to the wiser view, hopefully, and then let the operation continue. Yeah? Yeah, so something's going to open you up, and you know what? You'll be the better for it, and so will others. Hallelujah. Yeah? Yeah. So
Thank you.
this year, honey, that we've been together. I hope it's just the beginning. Yeah, not meaning you and I being together in Zoom, but of this trajectory, because to my feeling, this is clear direction, and you're under a process of change, but really, for change to be growth, it needs to be directed. Yeah, and there's a wisdom that's directing this change in us. Yeah. That gives it the meaning of growth. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, Paul, like, and this is not like, you know, I'm not saying this to be dramatic or for attention seeking. Miracles happened to get me to this point, and miracles have I've experienced God working through me and doing through me what my action figure is not capable of doing. I come from bad roots, and I genetically speaking, of course I ended up this way. And I'm seeing change. I think what's happening though is, unlike my abstinence from alcohol, I'm having a rougher time with the emotional sobriety, and I keep falling off the wagon. And I find myself just even being very punitive with crying, for example, like tracking in my calendar. Okay, well, I didn't cry these 4 days, but shit, I cried on Thursday, and you know, I'm treating that as me falling off the wagon. And
Yeah. Honey,
you know,
that's something playing God, though, Leah. You have one of those stern God playing things, yeah? You got to realize you got to send it a little memo that you have a new employer. Yeah, its consultations aren't wished for, so to speak. Yes. Yeah, you're hard on yourself, and therefore you're hard on others. But you know, even the like sharpest rock gets worn down by water. Yeah, so you're in that process, honey. And you also have the process of making amends when there's mistakes and you step on people's toes. You know, you make an amend, and yeah. But the whole point is, you know, in the past it would be, well, this isn't working, you jump off the boat and you drown. No, you stay on the boat, and then you keep going on the journey, so to speak. To what? Trusting the infinite from the finite self. Yeah? Yeah. Yes?
got it.
Yeah. And who says everything is supposed to work out? You may be more useful to being the way you are than the way you're hoping to be. You never know. I mean, I can't judge. Yes? I thought, like, when I was younger in AA, I could see that I could affect people because I could articulate what's in their heads. Yeah? And break it down into patterns so they could recognize something that was affecting them. Yeah? So it felt natural to put myself in a position to be used. It was just the way to go. And then when it seemed to be working on bigger scales, I took it as almost a demand that I should get better. I should really start working on myself. How could this come through me? And I attempted to, and that which was using me, called it off, basically. It just says, you don't need to be any better. You're perfectly suited for my little agenda. Yeah, so don't be, and basically, the memo that's always with every other memo. And, you're irrelevant in this event, so to speak. So don't worry. Just show up to the meeting. You don't have to be glorious and loving gazes. It's going to come through, yes? Because there's a bigger thing at hand than your little agenda and their little agenda, yeah? It's this agenda. So yes, I've learned long a time ago. Yeah.
Paul, that's very humble. It's beautiful. That's very, very humble and beautiful. And it's speaking to me because I think even there's somewhere in here, I'm still working an angle or an agenda.
You're not. It's the head, honey. You're not. Remember, you want to see the identification as that which you're not. So there. That's not you, hon. You're not the stern headmistress. You're not the fucking principal. You're not the, yes. Yeah, that's your head. That's an aspect of the selfing. Yeah. Yeah. You don't take orders from that anymore. And you don't have to, come to attention when it enters the fucking room. Yeah. You've got a much larger power at hand running the show. Yes? Yeah. This is the thing. I remember the first years of AA, I felt like the self that now had become the policeman aspect had me on probation for 5 years, Watching every little move I made, it was fucking hell. It was like living in East Germany, I imagine, in a Stasi period or something. It was just fucking, if this is sobriety, it's not that great. Yeah? But then I had to recognize that the self as the thief had moved to be the self as the policeman. Yeah? And the policeman didn't have much fun planned for me. It was so it's freedom from both aspects, not freedom from the one and then bondage to the other. Yeah. Yeah. So now a lot of the behaviors that were stern and there's more they're covered with acceptance, so to speak. You know what I mean? Yeah. 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 So that was something I hadn't had since my grandmother. My grandmother was the lady who brought me up, and she died when I was 9. And I had real love with her. Physical, emotional, dependence completely. And after she passed away, and the head got very developed, I really acceptance was a very foreign event. Yeah, not forthcoming, no matter what I did, really, or didn't do. And then over the years of just entertaining these ideas, I noticed that I was in a different atmosphere than I used to live in, which was, I would give it the words of acceptance. So all the blind sides and blind spots of Paul, maybe not loved or hated, but they were accepted, let's say, yeah? And because I see I'm not this, really, truly. I don't know what I am, but I see I'm not that which I had been taking myself to be. That I'm clear on. And so that which was being held as the cause of a lot of shit was this body, and it had a hell of a time living under this tyranny. Yeah, I mean seriously, and it was a great revelation when it was recognized as not the center of the universe, or the chariot to get to the gods or something. You know, it's just a regular action figure, and it has its foibles, and I have a way of life that I can make amends for my inconsiderate, dishonest, selfish, self-seeking events. Yes, I don't claim them to be mine, but I make amends for them, and I live a lot of living amends, really. When I notice something and someone's pointing it out to me, I take it to heart and I try not to do that as much. Yeah, and then but it's not like the headline news for 3 weeks. It's just all right, move on, and yeah, travel lighter through all this. Yes. So yeah, honey, just you that the policeman takes on a certain appearance in you. Yes, but both of them, the thief and the policeman, are emperors with no clothes. Yeah, yeah. You don't want to switch one for the other. It sucks. Tell you the truth. Yeah, yeah. So.
Thank you.
And thank you, honey. Thank you for all the you've done for me and this group. So you've been put to great use in these Zooms. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Leah. Thanks, Paul. Um, right now we don't have any hands, but you know, Gabe had his, oh, John D is available. Here, let's ask John to unmute.
Hi, I'm John. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, Paul, how are you today? It's nice to
Hey,
see you,
John.
even in our little box. I'm happy to, mention that you and I are dear friends and close in each other's lives. But nevertheless, your message is always richer and wider whenever I'm in the presence of it. And I was just thinking as if the concept of, for any of us who have the experience of collapsing under the misery of chemical dependency, and an authentic shift occurs like it did for me, or apparently for yourself and many millions of others, is that it drops me in a different place. Like, that isn't just like, I got a headache and I can't go up on that roof today or something. In my case, it's like it was like a demonic possession and I was terrified. It was like, that's different, But then, and so I come to AA, and it's much of a question, as I'm saying, because you speak in imagery and analogy that's great. Is it almost as if we come in AA and we might make the mistake that AA is a clearing, not a straitjacket, and that this idea that we put it on in such a manner that immediately this negative, bad self, whatever we want to call it, immediately wants to make a harness out of it instead of a clearing. Is that anything close to what you're saying? I'm really asking. Thanks.
Yes, yes. See, yeah, that's the thief and the policeman. So finally, the thief is brought to the court. Yeah, and now the spirit of the thief moves into the policeman, and you're bonded to self. Yes, from that little side. Yeah, so this is there's a term in certain philosophies and ways of looking at the world called duality. Yes, and the basis of duality in us is dualism. Yeah, and so the selfing is in us in the same way. Yeah, the selfing is unbeknownst to us is like the subjective Paul. Then it gets noticed, and now it's been objectified as the bad Paul, and now it appears to view the bad Paul from this policeman view of the good Paul. Yeah, and now you get bound to the bondage of the good Paul, which may be different as an expression as the bondage to the bad Paul, but they're both bondage. Yes. Yeah, and we're asking to be relieved of the bondage of self. And those are the twofold mannerisms they take, yes? The thief policeman activity. So now there could be a critical aspect in you that gets emphasized in sobriety, and now you suffer from a failed perfection, yes? So now you're doing inventories every day, looking at every intention. What is what? Yes. And now it's just more obsession with self. Yeah. In a different ballpark, so to speak. So then that in this ballpark of recovery, the policeman self has a much huger role than in the active addiction, where it's the thief self. Yes, we think there's only one self. No, there isn't. There's no selves. There are two aspects, and if one ain't getting you, the other is, so to speak.
Right. Like a drunken piece of shit. Now I'm a sober piece of shit. No good. There's
Well,
something
exactly, and
suspicious
you
about
know
that.
how people. I've worked with people who the policeman is that straitjacket where they can't stop taking inventories. So they're not enjoying the freedom from the thief self because the policeman self has got them watching every second. They can't take a shit without doing an inventory about it. That to me isn't, that's, yeah, I don't see that as freedom from the bondage of self. I see it as a new form of bondage of self, yeah.
Thank you for answering my question. I'm going to shut the fuck up now and turn off my microphone.
All right, nice to see you, John. Come on up here soon. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, John, for coming in. Thanks, Paul. And Alicio, I see your hand up.
Oh, hey, how you doing? I was supposed to say hi
Hey,
to
bro.
the lady that was speaking. But to Paul, I want to ask, is there an issue being a piece of shit?
Hmm?
Is there a problem being a piece of shit? Is that a
Unless it's
problem?
you that, I don't know, you'd have to be a piece of shit, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
I
the
just thought about that.
identification. The problem resides in the identification as the one who's a piece of shit, yes. Yeah?
The stickiness of I am the piece of shit.
Yes.
It's
The stickiness of identification, yeah. There's this axis of one that critiques the two, yeah. I'm insane, I'm really clear.
yeah. I
Yeah,
see.
but
Yeah,
there's a sense of you in both cases. Yeah,
I
yeah,
see. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I also think I have a joke question.
Hmm?
I just want to say hi. How you doing?
Nice to
That's
see you,
all.
bro. Yes. But that's an important point, I feel. But again, that goes a lot into the non duality idea. But yeah.
Thank you again, Paul. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yes, you're welcome.
Thanks, Alicio. And I see Michael Stacy has his hand up.
We don't take any questions from Stacy. No.
Well, that's good, Paul. Thank you. My name's Paul. And
I thought he was blocked. Blocked. All right.
this,
All right.
okay. So here's my way out. Okay, this question is actually from Nick in our group today, and he wrote to me in chat, and it goes like this: a little out of left field, but I'm hopeful that applying your philosophy to the outside world will deepen my understanding. So I'm curious how you view our penal system. If personal responsibility is essentially a delusion, how should we hold and support criminals? Thank you, Paul.
That's well, right now that's an outside topic, but yeah, I have my opinions about that, but they're not well placed here. Yeah, so there's criminality, but are there a criminal? Yeah, is there a criminal? Yes, this is trying arriving at the noun by the claiming of the verbing. Yeah, it's insanity, really. But hey, yeah. This place is crazy. Yeah. You got to do you got to do what you can do in the theater that you're in, so to speak. Yeah. So here we are in recovery, and our main agenda is to, to help other people attain sobriety, and to practice principles in our affairs. So we sort of stay on that point, and yeah. So, but if he wants an answer or wants my opinion, he can get in touch with me about the penal system. Thank God I was a fleeting member, though rather frequent, for never that long, in the penal system. Yes, but I had the great fortune here. They have a very big prison program in San Quentin, which is a famous prison, not far from where I live, about 15 minutes, but super far from how I live, super far, but not far geographically. And I used to go in there, and you'd have to get asked by people that are doing it. And so one guy who knew me from the past got in touch with me, and I used to go in there to bring a meeting in. And then I got the honor of speaking at the big event for the year. So at the end of the year, they have a big ice cream and dessert party for all the prisoners and all the people that have been coming in throughout the year. And it's this big gala, and then I was the main speaker. And then before me were prisoners, yeah. It was just mind-boggling. It was very, very cool. And I had the chance, it was like in a chapel inside, so there was a man sitting there, and I sat next to him before the whole thing started. And me and him started speaking, and he had killed 3 people. He was in there for life, yes? And he had been investigating like spirituality, and he had a pretty good understanding, at least from my humble view, of the idea of self and stuff. And we had a great conversation for like 20 minutes. And, these are the greatest moments of my life are the fleeting ones, I remember shit more like signposts on the road. But the road, some of the great moments just are in the living of it, yeah? And I had many of them that day, the great joy of sharing. So, and there was a lot of light there, yes? So wherever we are, that which is moving through us can override the effects of the situations and the circumstances. That's how powerful spirit is, yeah? So, yeah. See, a lot of people have a penal system in themselves. Yeah, they've got the thief and they got the policeman, and the policeman also plays the judge, and it's also the probation hearing people, and it plays a lot of roles. And then you're you're already convicted in that mental penal system already. Yeah, you are. You're convicted of things based on you being the doer of stuff that you should never have done. Yeah, or you should have done a lot of shit you never did. So there's been a passing of judgment on us already in the head. Yeah, don't be fooled. and the
Paul, may I say
penal
something real
system
quick?
is the penal system. Yeah.
Okay.
It could look like it's an open air prison, but it's still the penal system up here. Yeah, so we try to work on that penal system. We try to bring us into an awareness of what's going on, so that, because this can be walked out truly a lot easier than a physical one, in a sense. Yeah. Because a physical one, it's solid, and there's a point of it being seemingly real by its effects on us. Most of this mental shit's coming out of nothing. Yeah. So, yeah. In the court of light, you never were convicted of anything. All your seeming transgressions have been null and voided from the beginning, really. All the marks you think you've left has never laid a mark on what we are, you know? So hopefully you'll walk out of this Zoom with that idea. Yeah, yeah. What we do and don't do has a lot of effects. But the biggest effect is the idea of being the doer or the not the doer. Let's question that, yeah? This isn't a rehabilitation meeting. This is a recognizing the exact nature of the wrong meeting, in my view. Yeah. Yes. All right. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks, Nick, and thanks, Paul. And guess what? We have Kurt with his hand up, our friend Kurt. Let me ask him to unmute.
I got it. Thanks, Mickey. Thanks, Paul. You know, that I wasn't going to say anything, but Michael's conversation brought up, you know, because it relates to my experience. I had a long time ago, a guy said, look, I'm not an ex-convict. I'm a man who's been to prison. And
Yeah.
I've been on both sides of that. I've been locked up in the state penitentiary in Texas. And I got a number, 378742. But I also went back to prison. And that part of the message going back to prison was a message that was carried to me. You're not an ex-convict. You're a man who's been to prison. And that was just the extent of it, you know. So I've seen people that have come out of the penitentiary and have remained ex-convicts. In the last one, in fact, Chris, my buddy Chris knows him here, he died of an overdose because he was an ex-convict and he held on to that persona. And, you know, it's a shame because you know, we're not what we do, you know. So thanks, Paul, for your message.
Thank you, Kurt, for all the space and the support. Yes.
Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Paul.
Any-
I don't see any hands.
All right. Well, let's call it a day. Yeah.
Okay, will you have Rich put his hand up for a minute?
All right. Let's call Rich.
Hey, Paul, how
There
you
you go,
doing?
Rich.
Hey, Rich. No, you're muted. No, can't hear
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I just
All
want to say thank you, and just to say I've been just really touched and really been able to relate to what people have said about just crucifying themselves, really. I've had that, I'd never understood before what you're talking about the policeman, and I get it now, and that fucker has been like giving me shit since the things I did as young as 12 years old, and it would never ever let me off the hook. It was unbelievable. I could be Mother Teresa, Gandhi, and God knows who else rolled into one, and it was never enough. It would say, no, you're never enough, and it would come up with another reason why I was still the biggest piece of shit on earth. And yeah, I've just felt a lot of compassion listening to other people and just seeing that thing. I just want to say one last thing is what I was going to talk about originally, and then I got the hell choked up listening to everyone. I came out of my house the other day and there was a car across my drive and it were boxing me in. But I came out of my house to go for a walk. I didn't need to get out of my drive, but I felt that inside me. I looked at that car across the drive and that inside me wanted to watch that car burn. And I questioned it. I went, I don't care if that car's parked across my drive. I'm going for a walk. What does it matter? And turns out the guy whose car it was who was blocking me, and he came out and we had a really nice chat. Because I didn't listen to that, but what I'm not, then it ended up as a really good thing. So yeah, so just thank you. I'm getting a lot out of this. Thank you.
There you go. There's a little demonstration. That's actually pretty big. Yeah. You got to read the demonstrations because the head has an ongoing story to quickly forget miracles in a half an hour. Yeah, it's not like it's not an objective narration. Yeah, it has an agenda. It's attempting to support a story. So you have to, when the story is being counted by a new demonstration, it's a nice thing to honor it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something I'm practicing more and more. If I'd have honestly, if I'd have acted out on 10% of what my mind would suggest to me, I'd be life in prison without a doubt. But
Yes.
thankfully, I've always been quite a controlled person, so I've never really hurt anyone. But yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts in there, and I'm seeing it a little bit as separate, not as an enemy, but as separate. It's just a set of programs running away, and it just does what it does, and yeah.
Great.
Eventually, I'm just going to learn to just laugh at it or
That's
laugh with
great,
it.
because that's a report from space, space from the bondage. I always like those reports. Yeah, when you're starting to see what you used to look from, that's how it feels. And then you stated the word, and you had the emotion of compassion. That's an appropriate response to seeing that. Again, seeing in others. Yeah, just some
That's pretty
compassion.
new for me.
Yeah, I know. It's a wonderful feeling because, yeah, compassion, yeah. You get more used to it. It comes out of this. When you're living from the infinite, compassion is a frequent visitor because you just see what's happening, and yeah, you don't exempt yourself from it, even though if you're not feeling it now, you recognize it, and yeah, I had this personal experience this week. I have my oldest sister who really showed up when I got run over by the car. She really showed up. I wouldn't have one of my legs, my lower leg, if she hadn't fought for it, because they were going to cut it off. And she opened up a room from our old house. She had bought it from my mom, and I stayed in that room for 8 months in a hospital bed. So her son, her oldest son, has alcoholism, has him in other situations, and so I hadn't heard from him, and no one in the families. He's like persona non grata at family stuff. And I got a call, and in the beginning, a couple of years ago, it was the same, send me money and shit. And then he got sober, and then I didn't hear from him for months, and I knew, But he had been drinking, but he had enough wisdom to realize it hadn't taken off yet, but it was going to. So now he's been calling me every day, and I try to share with him, that thing of, to me it's like demonstrating for my sister, trying to be available to him. It's more, I have a feeling I've got like a dog in the hunt. I'd like him to be sober. Most people, it's life is determining it, but I'd like him to be sober. And it's sort of like funneling his mom's thing. And I was pointing it out to him that, this isn't all about you. You can do this as a living amends to your mother. You can see that her greatest wish for you was the same that my mother had for me, which was for me to be happy. And that was equated as me being sober. I needed to be sober if I was ever going to be okay. Yeah. So my mother wanted me to be sober, and she passed away, and I had 2 years of sobriety. And that has always done that was a great, just great. And so I was just, sharing that with him, and he had a moment of coming to Jesus, because I got emotional, and I was sharing and about how much I loved his mother. And yeah, it motivated him, it influenced him, and he's been calling me every day, and hopefully he'll get into the process, and hopefully live the rest of his life, or at least today, a sober man. It would be great. So yeah, you start having feelings like this a lot, because before, when I was out there, it was a priority not to feel anything other than what I shot up or drank. Yeah, really. And so now I have a pretty extensive life of feeling and emotion. Yeah, it's sort of cool. It's rich, very rich. So yeah, thanks guys. It was a nice day today. Eh?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Let's
Thanks,
say
Rich.
goodbye to
Thanks,
everyone.
Paul.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Thank you, Paul.
All right. So let's say a good hello and goodbye to everyone. There's Kerry. Kerry's now in his rightful home, Hawaii, I think. Yes, fantastic. Very good. Mike, nice to see you, Mike. See you soon, I think. Paul, nice to see you, Paul. I went with the button-down shirt. I figured, yeah, just keep pouring it on you. We got Kurt. Nice to see Kurt. Thanks for your share, Kurt. Tommy, I don't see you, but nice to see you. Jacob from Seattle and some character. Nice to see you guys. Leah, as always, yeah. You're a lifetime member of Zen Bitch Slap, honey. Yeah. Rich A, always thank you so much for sharing, and I could feel the sense of compassion. It's a very nice. It's one of the symptoms of being sober. Yeah, you start having empathy and compassion. Yeah.
I just thought I were cold and heartless.
Yes, it's awesome. So we've got let's see, I just lost everyone there. All right, we've got Mickey. Did a great job, Mickey. Yeah, yeah. Your hair got a little shorter or something, eh? Yeah. Don't go all nun on us. You're not going to go to the nun level. Maybe you will. All right. There's it's Jill, but with a G. Nice to see you, honey. I'm happy to see you're not in the driver's seat. That's good. We got Helen from England. Nice to see you, Helen. Joseph from France. John Dowd from, I don't know where he's from. He's from San Rafael. Yeah, right nearby. Malcolm. Nice to see you, Malcolm, as always.
Hey, man.
Ruby Rose, our emissary in Wichita, Kansas. Yes. Nina, not Tina or Mina. It's Nina. Nice to see you, Nina.
I want to say thank you to Leah for her question, because I really appreciated the question and your answer.
Fantastic. Great. Well, we're like a hive. Stefan on Having Never Left. Always a pleasure. We got Jess from Dublin or nearabouts. Yes, good to see you, honey. We got W. He's in home arrest in Amsterdam. He's got the ankle bracelet on. Can't leave. Nice to see you, Walter. We got Deb. Deb from Chicago. Hopefully getting over the knee, getting better. Good. Chris B. Nice to see you, Chris. We got Michael, Stacy. Say hello to Nick for me. Yeah. Nice to see you, Michael. Carl, always. Eamon. Nice to see you, Eamon. We got Tanya from Tanya MC. Nice to see you, Tanya. Eric. Eric, yes. Nice to see you, Eric.
I like your shirt.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to I'm gonna keep Paul down. I can't let Paul up in the UK until he surrenders. So yeah, I'm pouring it on.
Nice.
Thank
Good to see you.
Well, you gotta start. It's like compensation, When you get a little older, you gotta sort of compensate with some flair on the try to.
You look fly. You look fly.
There you go. Thanks. We got Maggie. I can't go on these little rants. I could get in trouble. We got Oliver, we got Nick, Maggie, and everyone else who's anonymous. Hey, such a pleasure. Thank you so much. I'll see some of you tomorrow night, and I'll see hopefully some of you back on Thursday. Yes?
Thank you,
Thanks,
Paul.
guys. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Paul.